Senator McCain offered this warning should the situation deteriorate.
No one wants American boots on the ground, nor will there be American boots on the ground, because there would be an impeachment of the president if they did that.
Okay, that was McCain speaking to a radio host in Phoenix. He's just one of 3 Republicans on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee to approve a Syria strike authorization. Joining me now is HLN contributor and Hiram College political science professor Jason Johnson. So, why bring up impeachment?
Because this is the kind of obnoxious red meat rhetoric that is keeping our Congress from being ever functional during this administration. Impeachment should not be a part of this discussion at all. This is an issue of whether or not there's proper evidence and whether or not it's in America's national interest. And McCain, when he says things like that, I think it weakens him and it weakens America's overall stature. I think
he's supposed to be supporting the president, but now he's threatening to impeach the president, and it just confuses people, doesn't it?
It confuses people, and it's disingenuous. I mean, on the first day he said, no, I don't want to do this at all. And the second day he's like, well, I'm only in favor of if he uses a bigger stick. The reality is that people like McCain are trying to play both ends of the aisle so that if this goes bad, he can claim that he didn't want to be involved to begin with. And I think that's cowardly.
But shouldn't we just be laying out the case whether, I mean, this is serious. It's not the time to play politics. So why do we keep playing politics? Like, oh, if I vote for this, then people won't vote. We shouldn't be doing that.
We shouldn't be doing it at all. And especially after Assad's interview. I mean, we just saw Assad basically get on the air and taunt and attempt to, for lack of a better word, punk the United States. And if anyone is concerned about how Iran might be looking at this, how North Korea might be looking at this, we have to have a united front either in favor or against. And I think these kinds of politics by the Republicans and some Democrats are not helpful.
Okay, you're talking about Assad punking the United States. So let's play a bit of his interview from CBS this morning.
That reminds me about what Kerry said, about the big lie that Colin Powell said in front of the world on satellites about the WMD in Iraq before going to war, when he said, this is our evidence. Actually, he gave false evidence. In this case, Kerry didn't even present any evidence. He talked, we have evidence, and he didn't present anything.
Okay, he went on to, I mean, he used many of American talking points. He mentioned, like, you don't want to get into another Iraq war, right? America, you don't want to do that. Mr. President Obama, hear the American people. All the polls say the majority of the American people don't want to strike. And do you want the leader of such a country to be saying? I mean, this is what Congress has to consider.
Exactly. I find it hilarious when a dictator who brutalizes his own people starts to talk to us about polls. But the reality is also this. Iran is looking, and what Assad is actually saying, it doesn't make any sense when you look at the amount of evidence, not just what the United States says. The Arab League, his neighbors have said, you are guilty, and they have condemned him for this. They just don't want military action. So this is no longer a question as to whether or not Assad was responsible. This is a question of what the United States will do and whether we should wait for the UN or we should have him sign some sort of treaty. That's what's really on the table.
Okay, so the president's going to sit down with 6 journalists today, and he's going to grant them interviews about Syria, and then tomorrow he's going to address the American people. The American people are rightly skeptical of all of this because of our, great track record, right, in the Middle East. So what does the president need to do to convince the American people that striking Syria is the right thing to do?
He has to contextualize this. He has to say, look, not just that this isn't Iraq and this isn't Vietnam. We are in a situation where if we don't act now, the United States will look not only weak, but irresponsible. We can't go around and tell people, you can't do this in Israel, you can't do this in Kosovo, you can't do this in the Middle East, and then we don't back anything up.
The American people are not going to care about
that.
We're not going to care about that.
They never care.
But the American people want to see a plan.
Exactly.
They want to see a plan. They want to see hardcore evidence. They want to see why we should fear Syria. That's what they want to hear. Will the president deliver that?
I think if he does, he'll be successful. And I think the most effective way for him to do that is Assad basically threatened us in his interview. Assad said, I don't know if weapons of mass destruction or gas attacks. If the president comes out and says, this is what we're dealing with right now. We're dealing with someone who's directly threatening the United States. Do we want to allow that to continue? If he makes that argument, even more so than dying children and things like that, I think he'll move some of the American public.
Jason Johnson, thanks so much.
Thank you.